Well, hello, hello. This is Kim with Midnight Gypsies. I have an announcement to make. Jackie had an emergency, so she won't be joining us today. But I have a wonderful, wonderful guest, Nikki Miller. I've had her on my show before. I think this is a perfect, perfect opportunity to have her back on in support of International Women's Day. Nikki, you're in Tehachapi right now, and you just got done with the Red Tent
That is,
event.
yes. Thank you so much for having me, Kim.
Sure, sure. So I wanted to tell them just a little bit. Do you got more tattoos?
I did. I got a few more since you've seen me last.
Oh my gosh! You know what? I was just thinking I wanted to have a show for women with tattoos. I just think it would be amazing.
I agree. It's very empowering.
Is it really? I mean, I don't have any tattoos, and I thought, you know, uh, it would be kind of a symbol on your like astral body. Your whole spiritual body would see those symbols, and then can you explain why that's so powerful?
Yeah, I love that you put it that way. I've actually never heard anyone put it so eloquently, but that's exactly how I feel about it. I guess I've always thought about it like, in a way, on my deathbed, the wisdom I've accumulated in my life, having that on my dermal layer, kind of my body, letting it be
Yes.
evident, like as within, so without kind of a thing. So I've always regarded tattoos as an initiation ceremony when I learn a lesson or I go through a certain spiritual portal in time.
Wow. So Nikki, you have been around the world, and you have worked with a lot of spiritual women, correct?
I have, yes.
Can you just tell the viewers a little bit about what you've done and where you've been?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. I started by traveling to India, and this was after I had become a yoga teacher. And I went there and really just learned from everyone and went to the Himalayas and throughout China a little bit. And then I came back to Tehachapi, had the yoga studio in Tehachapi and did a little journey here. And then went to Fairfield, Iowa to study Ayurveda and integrative medicine. And from there, started my current company, which is based in Hawaii, the big island of Hawaii. And really from Hawaii on, have just been traveling the world. So went to Peru, did some meditations in Machu Picchu, and throughout Mexico too recently, and just really, traveling around, just seeing the world. It's a beautiful time to travel, I think, especially. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say with COVID, but it's good to see that there are so many ways to be in the world right now and to really continue to expand our perspective. And we can do that virtually so well, but there's nothing that really replaces being there and immersing ourselves in that. And, vibrational integration, like, wow, life is actually completely different in different parts of the world.
And have you been traveling since COVID?
I have traveled since COVID a little bit. For myself, I feel pretty clear that I don't want to take like a COVID test or go through the measures. So if a place requires that I take a COVID test, then I just don't go there. Pretty much
Right.
is my personal way of dealing with it. Yeah.
I haven't taken a test. I refuse it. I'm not going to take the jab either. I'm just against all of that.
I feel very similarly. Yeah.
It's just been such an invasion of privacy in every way, shape, and form, and it's just so personal. I mean, your health is your health, and your doctors or whoever, and we have rights. And I just think that it's just gone overboard. We've lost a lot of rights, and this is where I'm going to lead us into the International Women's Day. So I did take some notes so I could get the dates and everything right. It's a day to celebrate the unique strength of women all over the world. It started with the labor movement of the 20th century, which was a turning point in the history of womanhood. The term is now like a magic wand in terms of building the support system for the rights of women in their participation in such areas as the political, socio-economical, and cultural realms. It is a day that calls for equality of all women in all societies. The first Women's Day was organized by actually the Socialist Party of New York in America on February 28th, 1909, which was a German inspired organization. So it actually, the theme soon spread across Europe and the Soviet Union. After it was celebrated by socialist movements, which that's who started it, was the socialists. It became it moved into the communist countries, and it became a far left movement. So you started out with something kind of socialist, to celebrate women and give them more rights and things, and then we sent it over to the communist countries, and it turned into the far left, and that's where it kind of gets a little crazy. But anyways, in the late 60s, it became a global feminist movement where it was taken up by a second wave of feminists. That's when they burned their bras and whatever, the hippie generation, love and everything.
Yes.
But after that, the movement ushered in protests and calls for radical change. In 1977, the International Women's Day was adopted by the United Nations. It continues to be used by the radical left, though, at time. And back then, the labor organizations that call for equal pay, equal rights, reproductive rights, childcare, and protection against violence. And more recently, it's been a call for world peace. And I'm almost done. Today, International Women's Day is about the empowerment of women, particularly in areas of social protection system, public schools, and substantial infrastructure. Marches are still occurring in the streets of London, Paris, Madrid, Brussels, Moscow, just to name a few, calling for women in leadership. Okay, the movement is highlighting the impact of girls and women as caregivers, care workers, innovators, and community organizers. So I kind of wanted to stop it there, and I kind of wanted to start talking about the red tent, because what I just said was that the movement right now is highlighting the impact and the importance of girls and women as caretakers, caregivers, and community leaders and organizers. So tell us a little bit about the red tent. I was going to show a little clip here. I have two little trailers. I have a movie where the actual red tent. Did you see that movie that was on the Lifetime series?
I did.
Did you love it?
Yes.
Did that inspire you to start the red tent movement in your area?
Well, I did read the book as well, and I saw the movie. I am very inspired by that work, absolutely. And I do think that probably that just being in the common culture is what allowed me to first know that the red tent was a historical thing. And then what inspired me to host locally was taking Tanishka Tantrika's red tent teaching, so that she taught me basically how to facilitate the red tent in the traditional ceremonial way that it's been done for ages. So
who taught you that?
Her name is Tanishka Tantrika, and she is in Australia, I believe Sydney, but I could be wrong. Definitely Australia. And she's known as the Moon Woman on
Facebook. I think that's the second trailer I have. You actually learned from her?
I did, yeah.
Oh my God.
So, just learn from her the tradition of it. Her program is absolutely incredible and very edifying on the history of the red tent, as well as the archetypes of the feminine that have been suppressed throughout time. I just blew my mind to learn about Lilith, to learn about the story of different biblical tales.
Yes.
From a completely different perspective, and to really move into that and to learn that part of what I learned through Tanishka's training is that the red tent was actually a historical thing where women got together on the new moon. And not only did they set intentions for themselves in the village, but they worked out problems that the village was facing at the time, because women are naturally collaborative problem solvers. And so that's what we would do. And the men would actually support the women going into the tents to bleed together. They lived in villages at the time. So, of course, they would sync up in their cycle and go. And for, anywhere between 1 to 3 days, they would be brought food from the men, and the men would take care of the kids, and they would have time to just nourish their bodies and be together.
Are you listening, men?
I know, yes. Male support of the red tent is a very vital part of it functioning well in the world.
Yeah, it's so funny how the traditional roles have kind of swapped and then come back and then swapped, and then they're kind of just like, there's a balance. There's a lot of families that are sharing the roles now, and it works. And there's a lot of, equality. Women want to be equal. Not in men's strength and stuff. Like, I don't believe with those women, with the women's sports, having the men in there. I mean, that's that far left thing that I'm not jiving with,
Right. I believe in recognizing our differences and allowing those differences to be harmonious. Like, unity and diversity together is, to me, a healthy system, so.
Yes. Well, let me read a couple of notes that I have, and then I'll show the 2 trailers of the red tent.
Okay.
It says, as far as highlighting caregiving, that more women are actually caregivers to families, such as children, grandchildren, parents, etc. The average age is 49. So we are in midway between life and death. And where the biggest caregivers are in that middle age range. And it kind of reminds me of the symbol of the full moon and then the 2 crescents. I feel like middle age is right here, because you really are carrying a lot of responsibility as far as caretaking, not only the children, the grandchildren, but the parents and the aunts and things. But at our age, women have more stress. They're more prone to heart disease, and we tend to sacrifice jobs and money to provide care for our loved ones. But before the whole movement, of equality, women were staying at home, and then that's just what they did. And then the wars came, and they had to go out and work in jobs and things, and then that's when it became a sacrifice. So we had to, go out and work, and staying at home was no longer a luxury. It actually, you have to sacrifice the jobs now and the money and things like that. But let me go ahead and play this. I'm going to share this right now. Let's see, share screen. Red tent.
For thousands of years, I have been lost. My tale begins with the red tent. Oh Lord, somewhere between a hangman's died and free man's feet. Oh Lord, was in a wrong or right? Could choose. He did what he had. Oh Lord, begging you, please. Images of woman made. Where do I go to find images of woman made? Yeah. All of humanity is woman born. Women, your wisdom is in dreams. Our wisdom cannot be lost. Our spirits cannot be broken. Our wisdom cannot be lost, and our spirits cannot be broken. Our wisdom cannot be lost. Our spirits cannot be broken. Our wisdom cannot be lost, and our spirits cannot be broken. Women, I'm calling you, women. I'm calling you, women. I'm calling to you, calling out to you. Ooh, 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 awaken to your power. Awaken to your power. Awaken to your power. Awaken to your power. Wisdom cannot be lost, and our spirits cannot be. Yeah, women, your wisdom is in dreams. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, ooh. Hey, yeah. Hey.
So anyways, yeah, that's I can't believe you learned from her.
Yes, and she has an online course where anyone can learn to be a red tent facilitator.
Say that again.
She has an online course where anyone can learn to be a red tent facilitator. So you can check out themoonwoman.com and find her red tent teaching there.
It's definitely something that I really wanted to do. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I was so inspired when I went to the red tent that you held. Tell us why it's so important at this time, at this time and day.
It's such a good question. I think the reason it's very important is that women are going to lead us into the golden age. Of course, the masculine and the feminine need each other and are equally as powerful and will build the golden age together. But women will be, at least for the beginning part, is my understanding, at the forefront of the revolution of consciousness, really championing human rights issues, really allowing us to speak about the difficult topics that are before us as a species. And the reason it's important to get together in red tents is that that's how we've solved problems for thousands and thousands of years. Women getting together, just talking. As you know, I'm coming out of a red tent. Tonight we had the gathering, and it was a virtual gathering with many women, from around the country who got together. And I truly felt the resonance of the circle being cast from all the places that we were, and all the wisdom that was shared and the vulnerability. What we did tonight was actually release notions we've held towards women and towards the feminine energies that are no longer serving us. And we replaced those notions with,
oh my God.
Yeah, with new notions, more healthy. And it was very vulnerable to, of course, share these things in a group of women, but we all did. And it was just very transformative. So that's why it's important.
So So you did this virtually?
Yes.
Wow.
So I hosted the Red Tent, as you know, in person. And there was a group of people at Lusk that would get together every month. And they really got to know each other. And through that, after Lusk wasn't a physical entity anymore, we took that Red Tent group online and created the Facebook group there that's been, together for, I think, probably about 3 years now. And I've lived in other places throughout the country. So I've started red tent groups at the places I've lived. And just through COVID coming along, it made natural sense to kind of bring these red tent groups together online since I couldn't get together with them anyways. And it's been really nice for me too, just because it's so simple. Like, tonight I feel a little bit more cozy. So I'm just like in my bed, kind of like honoring that. And I can still do my work and meet with people, but honoring like my energetic, which I think is also part of feminine leadership. So I love that in a way that's a positive thing that's come out of the coronavirus, is that we're able to kind of pull back and recharge, because we need that in order to come up with essentially better ideas.
Geez, I'm just so overwhelmed because like I wrote notes and I'm gonna throw these out. You just said all that. I'm like, oh my God. So when is the Red Tent? Is it okay? So Thursday, and you had it. Is it every Thursday or?
So it's on the Thursday closest to the new moon. So I do post in the Facebook group. All the dates for 2021 have already been announced. I'm more than happy to share those with you, and you can share those with your community of people, and they're welcome to join.
What's the name of your Facebook so they know?
My personal Facebook is Nikki Miller, but the Red Tent group is just called The Red Tent. And if you go to my personal page, I think it'll link you to different groups that I'm a part of, and you can find it that way. People can also email me directly at wolfwellnessworld.com. Some people that join the Red Tent, they don't have Facebook or social media, and I'll send them the access links directly. So if that is applicable, you can email me.
So, let me go over some of my notes, even though you just summed it up. Like you want to get into the divine feminine and the archetypes and everything like that. Yes. It's so important to support each other. We don't have anything to prove, really. And we are our worth as caregivers. So, there's no competition. We just do it, and we need to support each other. It's so important to honor our mothers, our aunts, our sisters, nieces, daughters, and girlfriends. Women have been forming support groups since childhood, and for centuries too. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a civilization that hasn't honored women and their opinions. And let's see what grandma has to say, or what would mom say, and that's just in the family environment. But then when you go up the business world, even the men and the CEOs, they still come home and they ask their wives for their opinion. So we kind of are still helping to run society just in a more discreet way. But now I believe we're starting to come forward, and using our voice is so important. You have a movement that people are out in the streets protesting, and you never used to see it here in America. You used to see it around the world, and then you see people protesting. They're using their voice. I just think that's amazing. We're using your voice is like, it helps to dispel fear, and it's like, I don't know, it helps to dispel fear, and just knowing that others are feeling those same things is very empowering. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, yes. And if I may add one thing to that, I agree with everything you said. And also, some people don't know that the vocal cords are connected to the cervix and different reproductive organs in the women physiology. So when you open your throat chakra and you practice communicating your truth, you're also strengthening, energizing, nourishing your womb. And, womb wisdom is where it's at. Like, that's where we actually create in this world from. When we to that place.
Mhm.
You know? So I think opening the throat is an amazing place to start with that womb wisdom.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be one of the reasons why singing is so important and so cleansing? It's so
Yeah.
harmonizing.
Exactly. Absolutely. And think of a woman who has a beautiful voice who's expressing that. It is exuding some type of like Shakti, right? Like feminine power. And it's because her womb and cervix is more relaxed as her vocal cords are expressing. So it's like this, you know, she's exuding a different energy in that state. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of putting the pieces together for me, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, I just think that people like Stevie Nicks. One of the things that I wanted to do with Jackie, unfortunately, she's not here. Like I said, if anyone's just tuning in, Jackie had an emergency, so she couldn't be here. I wanted to maybe list a couple of women that have really inspired you, you know, through your life. One of those women is actually Stevie Nicks. I mean, her voice and the empowerment that she brings through her voice is just amazing, you know.
Absolutely.
Do you have a someone who inspires you?
Mm. Many people, yeah. I would say my grandmothers on both sides are a huge inspiration for me. They're no longer with us, but the way that they live their lives and kind of what they gave me through the lineage, really inspirational. And I would say my first yoga teacher, Laura McKinnon, who like truly changed my life through just teaching me how to breathe.
That's amazing. So I wrote some notes on leadership, and so despite the barriers, female leaderships are on the rise. More emphasis on the public good. So um, not so much caregiving now. We can do caregiving, and we can help become female leaderships in the community with emphasis on the public good and helping others. Um, and women aren't trying to be clones of men. You know, they're placing their emphasis on compassion and fairness. These traits, as well as being competitive, are highly valuable in society. Not domination. Domination is not going to work. We know that. Women are stepping up to the plate as leaders. Um, so environment. There's a lot of women. A lot of women. I work with a lot of women. You know, we have our good days and our bad days. We communicate. You know, if I'm in a bad mood, leave me alone, you know, but still we all work together and we build team. And that's one of the things that women are good at, our team building.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So in your red tent, you have people of all ages.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, maiden, mother, and crone archetypes to sit together. So initially when a woman started bleeding, she would be invited to the red tent and welcomed by the community of women, and in a way sort of congratulated, you know, and celebrated in that way. And she'd be able to ask questions to the mothers, to the grandmothers, and gather the wisdom. Like, what does it mean to be a woman now? Like, how do I care for my body? Like hygiene, nourishment, all the different things that practically and spiritually you would want to know. And yeah, it was a beautiful initiation.
yeah, I believe so. And like anymore, you know, we're so separated. Our families are separated.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get to come together. Like, let's say in big families, and your grandmother has some wisdom to speak. And before, like in the red tent, everyone would be there. Everyone in the community and other families and your friends and their daughters and their mothers, and everyone got to hear that piece of wisdom. And now, you know, so the families are so split up that little piece of wisdom just got lost because it's just too much to remember. So it's so important to bring back these red tents. And I really want to encourage people to look into it and get online with you and learn that and learn this series and learn how to do it in your own communities. It's really important. It's really important. Like you said, women are going to be leading the golden age. Tell us a little bit about the golden age and what's coming for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So the golden age is a time of abundance and harmony amongst masculine and feminine energies. And it's a time where the wisdom of the ages accumulates into our society. So, like, in a way, the Akashic records, all that we've earned to be at this point, at this time, our society will begin to express that wisdom, because in the precession of the equinox, where the earth is, we're under the photon belt right now, and a lot of light is filtering down. And so light, we have information, and we're receiving that Akashic record, that information. And when you know better, you do better, right? So we have access to more information. We're going to do better because of it.
I definitely agree with this photon and the light being giving us knowledge, and I just think the more light that you can carry within, the more you're just going to kind of, it just feels like being streamed with life, streamed with knowledge, streamed with information. It's like, how did I know that? And as far as like divine feminine and divine masculine, what has happened to the male? I mean, no offense, but we took men off to wars, and we lost a lot of the good men, like the warrior, and who couldn't go to the war were some of the men that say had flat feet or whatever, and we lost all the warrior types, and the men with that didn't make the cut were the ones breeding and having babies and families and passing on a different type of male. Would you say that's good or bad, or what are your opinions on that?
Well, unfortunately, it was breaking up a little bit along the way, so I'm putting together what I did hear of what you said. But you're asking me, I believe, about the masculine energy and the integration of that kind of breaking down throughout the generations, the wisdom of the masculine, like the strong masculine sort of being degraded. And what's the question?
Well, I remember reading about say in the Roman times and all of the wars, and they took all the best warriors, they took all the best men, and the ones staying behind with the women were the ones that were breeding and having babies and passing on their DNA, which we were kind of weeded out the warrior. And so is that kind of good or bad? I mean, do you think that we weeded out aggression, or what did we weed out, and what are we left with?
This is a very, very interesting question that's super close to my heart, actually, because the hunter and the healer, I believe, have a connection. I have always gravitated towards hunters, and I'm a vegetarian, so that's pretty strange, right? Mm-hmm. But I've looked at that over time, and I do think that it's that primal part of me that I've learned to embrace more and more, that allows me and others to be sovereign, right? Like, you don't want to have to rely on your grocery stores and your government to give you access to food. You want to be around men who know how to fish, know how to hunt, and you want to be a woman who knows how to, cook that stuff, and what's safe and what isn't. The healing herbs, how to lay hands on and do these things, and how to hunt too. Obviously, you know what I mean? But there's roles that were given for a certain reason, because again, women's physiology and men's physiology are different. Like, we're meant to make people. That's a certain physiology. Some people don't know that women's nervous system is inherently more complex than men's nervous system, and that consciousness flows through the nervous system. So inherently, the implication is we're picking up on more information and running it through our being than men are. And why denigrate that? Like, why make that wrong? Why not just embrace that? You know, they say that men are more simple than women. They think more simply and they do more simple. That's beautiful. Like, we need that. And
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
yeah, so I think that, you know, and that's not to, like, these broad sweeping categorizations can be really difficult. Like, I can already hear the rebuttals, but I'm just speaking generally here to like have a conversation. So I hope people understand that there's a lot of nuance here and there's like a lot of gray area. But yeah, I think that it's important that men know how to do those things and provide, and also that women do too. You know, like, again, women can be both healers and hunters. I think of the archetype of Artemis, who was like, you know, the goddess of the hunt. So she wasn't waiting around for a man to provide her meals. Like, she did it herself. There's many aspects of the feminine that do these things, you know. But yeah, like, as a woman, I can honestly tell you that if I didn't feel that my partner could physically protect me and provide for me, if I became sick or I became, like, you know, with child or something like that, I wouldn't be sexually attracted to him. And I do think that there's like a polarity that makes sexuality happen when women are in their feminine, whatever that feminine looks like. There's a million archetypes to it. And the man is in the masculine. Again, there's a million archetypes to the masculine, but we can have that together. And I do kind of wonder if we're really trying to balance out the energy and we understand that as becoming androgynous beings, whether we've missed the mark, because I don't think it's becoming androgynous beings. I think it's embodying our essence more fully. And that can look different ways. It's not a prescriptive thing.
I agree. I agree. Wow, you said it so eloquently, because when I first talked about the Women's International Women's Day and how the far left got a hold of it, and then they start, you know, they have pushed it to a whole new level of confusion, and it's kind of left people like, what the hell am I supposed to be doing? You know, and so I agree with you. I like that those traditional roles that, you know, have been taken away from us. And how do we struggle? How do we get it back? How do we convince our partner that this is how I want it? This is how I want you. You know, it's just become so confusing anymore, and it's a really it's a good idea that men have their men's clubs and women have their women's clubs, and I think that there needs to be that separation. And like you said, the idea of androgynousness, what the far left is pushing on us, is again, missed the mark. It missed the mark, because
concept in mass or in these red tent groups that I love to bring into this time, which is that we have the red tent, but they have the blue tent, and they come together to make the purple circle. And I've actually started to attend the purple circle. I did so with my partner in 2019, and it was
wow.
Yeah,
What is this? Is this new?
Yeah, it is, because the red tent has become a thing, right? So the men were like, well, what about our circles? And they started kind of a movement called the blue tent. And, you know, they call it different things. It's obviously not always called that, but that's the principle. And then when these individual groups that have already established themselves come together, then you can really have a conversation, and not only have the conversation together, but leave that space of masculine and feminine sitting in circle, and then digest it individually in the men's circle and the women's circle, because that's also really needed. Like, whoa, that was a lot. Like, how can we break this down later, you know, together, like that? And it's coming together and it's going apart. It's coming together, it's going apart. But the coming together part is really important. But you have to be established in yourself to participate in any system. So men need each other to build that kind of essence, and then women need each other to build that essence we establish, and then we come together. Another thing I wanted to say, just, I feel like I'm on a tangent, but I just want to
No, go ahead.
I just want to add this.
Minutes. Go ahead.
The masculine energy within women and men, just masculine energy, which is the doing principle, the active principle, it recharges in solitude. And the feminine principles, the receiver, the absorber, that energetic recharges in groups. So the feminine aspect of men need that togetherness, right? And the masculine aspect of women need the alone time.
Well, I agree. And sometimes I think people might get confused about feminine aspect of men and masculine aspect of women, because we all know that each person has male hormones and female hormones. Okay. And so we can experience a little bit of those male traits in a woman, and men can have some of the female traits. But again, the equality, I don't believe in the equality to where you have to be half and half. I still think that you should have your full essence of what you are, and the male full essence of what he is. And like you said, you blend together. So I don't know. What do you feel about the whole gender theory about letting children decide if they're male or female and all that kind of stuff? Do you think that that's okay, or we should just not judge that and let people do it? Or
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting conversation. I don't know the answer to that. It's something that I ponder from time to time. To add to that conversation, to me, kind of an interesting point, I took this class in my undergrad, and it was taught by a person who was born a woman who had transitioned to a man. And this person actually taught me that I believe it's 250,000 people annually are born androgynous, with completely androgynous sexual organs and even hormones, that they're literally half and half when they
how many people?
I can't quote directly because it's literally been years since I've been in college, but it was something I believe around like 250,000. It wasn't a whole lot, but it's kind of like enough.
That's a lot.
Yeah, right? Like, it's like, that's kind of happening. So anyways, what happens with this, which blew my mind, is it actually becomes up to the doctor and the parents to decide, basically just however they decide, what the gender of that child is. And the theory, the observation over time is, hey, sometimes they guess wrong. And actually the inner makeup of that person is the opposite of what you chose for them. And that's why this can be like happening. So that really broadened my perspective and allowed me to know that, like, wow, something else is happening here. Now, certainly I think there can be confusion about gender, and there can be a navigation about what does this mean, and people just playing around with roles, right? They're all just roles anyways. So, you know what the Shakespeare quote, like, the world's a stage and we're all like players or actors.
Right.
Like that, you know, and people trying on different hats, kind of a thing too. But there is actually a scientific component to this phenomenon.
Well, that's good to know. And that kind of made me think of something. So what I've learned is when we grow up and we have like shame-based trauma or some kind of trauma or shame or embarrassment or guilt or low self-esteem, whatever. I mean, the world's full of traumatic experiences where, you know, children are not thriving as one might expect, and they're suffering, you know, and they're acting out in a lot of different ways, a lot of different depression and things like that, because they don't, number one, they don't understand what's going on within themselves, and then they're afraid to talk to others. Children are bullied and things like that. And if you think about it, let's say if you realize that everyone on the street had that and they were talking about it, you would be able to come forward. And do you imagine how much relief it must be for people, children especially, to just feel accepted and, wow, you have it too, or that happened to you? Again, the voice and expression is so powerful to, you know, survivors of abuse and all kinds of trauma. I kind of understand the movement and the far left and how they're going, well, let the child decide or whatever. I mean, I can understand that. But I guess it's just up to the individual, and we have to accept that anymore. We just have to accept new ways of thinking in order to include everyone in the experiences of life in order to accept each other.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think it can be so difficult to like label things. I mean, obviously you have to label things to have a conversation, but just because politics is such a charged thing, and I think it's strategically charged to like polarize the country, you know, like the left and the right, like that thing. When I talk to people, I don't use those specific terms, and I often find that because I don't use those terms, people that have very different quote unquote labels that they would put on themselves, they often tell me the exact same things. You know what I mean? This is how I feel. These are my beliefs and whatever. I'm like, yeah, basically people pretty much have a consensus. And I think the labels and the things
Yes,
from having the conversation, you know.
that makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody wants to be labeled.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be labeled because nobody is one thing. We're a multitude of things. And when you start labeling a kid at a young age, they're just going to start believing that that's who they are, you know. And anyway, so that's kind of makes sense to me now. I guess I kind of understand things a little bit better.
One thing can add to this too. I know that kids being born now have a different DNA structure than like my generation did or your generation, that they are literally coming into this world with activated strands of cosmic information. And so who knows, like maybe they are deciding for themselves, like what type of embodiment or like how they want to express that, you know, like it's different.
Yeah, that is true.
Have you hung out? I'm sure you've hung out with the kids that are like 10 and under right now, or even like 15 and under. I'm like, they came into this world with purpose. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Strong.
Yes, I do.
So being like that is like, actually, you can call me Sally. You'd be like, okay, Sally. You know what
I mean? Yeah. Children can teach us a lot. You know, and I have a grandbaby. She's like 3.5, and I always tell my daughter, well, my daughter's amazing. My daughter had this baby with absolutely no, you know, medicine. As I had mine too, we'd have nothing. But I had that Pitocin. She didn't even have any of that. and her baby is just amazing. My grandbaby's just amazing. Hold on.
So sweet.
Hi, Ed.
Hello.
Okay, so yeah, you know, if we don't start programming children with our hang-ups and the world's hang-ups and fears and things, yeah, children can teach us, definitely. So the next subject that I want to, and then we have about 10 minutes, I wanted to speak about the divine feminine energy. I kind of put down in some notes is what I kind of think it is. It's a force that inspires us to create. It is the energy that provides us with empathy, intuition, and it pushes us to grow spiritually. It is the force behind our emotional awareness that allows us to be more vulnerable and open to intimacy without fear or aggression, and the force that fuels our inspirations and motivations. It could be termed the Holy Spirit, or some kind of force that fills us and helps us to utilize our emotions and intentions in order to bring forth everything into existence. Does that make sense?
That's beautiful.
I mean, how do you describe divine feminine?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great question. I would say like the cosmic portal to God, to just like encapsulate everything.
Ways to channel that cosmic energy is through a type of a portal, and it's a process. There's a whole spiritual process that you go through in order to reach that level where you can start channeling that force. Some of the ways to do that is to let go of pain and suffering. Okay. One of the ways to do that is crying. You know, crying really does release a lot of toxic emotion. And that's one of the first things we need to do. And then we can learn to identify, feel, and process our suppressed emotions. So we begin to tune into our true selves. This opens our inner awareness as we begin to tune up our true selves and our senses. And then we can delve into our real strengths, such as sixth sense and stuff like that. Meditation helps, keeping journals, being present in the moment, and practicing self-love. You know, once you can process toxic emotions and guilt and things like that, and let that stuff go, you clear out your vessel, and now you have a very sensitive being that learns to determine the difference between joy and happiness and all the different emotions. And instead of being a melting pot of all these emotions that you don't understand, you can identify how you're truly feeling. This is when we become empowered. And then when we become empowered, we have more empathy and compassion for others' suffering. We have a strong desire to connect with other females. And this is talking about divine feminine. We have a strong desire to express ourselves, like I said, our voices. We stop judging one another because we've been there. We've done that. You know, it's so easy to judge until we've let it go and look back and learn through that process. And then we can have more self-love and self-care. We begin to have unconditional love because we are filled with that source energy. And then we can start really experiencing true emotions like joy and happiness. And what's really important to me in this International Women's Day podcast is I really want to express is that there's no need to compete with other women. There really isn't. We then begin to respect other women and their accomplishments, and we support women in their endeavors, and last but not least, we raise our frequency so we can connect with that energy and hold it in our space. So it's a process to get to that level to where you can actually feel that flow of divine energy coming through you, where you're just so compassionate. I mean, you can cry and, you know, and just release, and you can just feel things on such a different level.
Absolutely. So well said. Yes. Nodding in agreement over here to all of that.
And then boom, I have just a couple more pages of notes. And then boom, that's the spiral of life. That's the circle of life, is because we come back around. So we initially do that healing and that releasing and that cleansing and that growing and that acceptance, and then filling with the spirit and becoming joyful and passionate. And then we see others. And what do we want to do? We want to do it all over again, but we want to do it with them, and we want to help them. And we continue to raise each other up. That helps to clear out karma from past lives and other realms and things like that, if we keep going and we keep releasing all that toxicity, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when you receive that source light, your inner light becomes brighter and brighter, and then you begin to radiate that light. It's like being wrapped up. It's like being held or enveloped by the Holy Spirit. And that's when you get your holy garments, the white robe that they talk about in the Bible. And that is like becoming a saint, where you are now here. You feel like your purpose is to do good work, your sole desire becomes doing work and helping to bring forth world peace. And that's the mother energy. That is the divine feminine energy working through, like you and I and a lot of other women. And is if you're like a tower of light and I'm like a tower of light, together we can be so much brightness for others, and we can only do it by the support of others. That's why I'm so thankful that you're doing that red tent. Let's go over again.
I need it too.
How long did it take you to learn about the red tent? And then how much does it take to start up? I mean, what does a person need to do if they wanted to do that in their area?
I'm not sure if her course has changed over time, so I'm kind of reluctant to answer for that now. I took her online course prior to Lusk opening, so probably like 4 years ago or something, maybe even 5 years. But I know she still has it online, so I'd check that out. It's a couple months. You can do it at your pace and go through, and then you get a certificate at the end. And I believe the cost is definitely under $1,000, maybe even under $500, like the whole training. And then it is a source of income if you want it to be. I have the red tent just on a donation basis. I don't do it necessarily for that reason, but that was part of Tanishka's training, is that we're teaching people to value what is valuable in the golden age. So if you would like to make money hosting the red tent, that's beautiful. And it teaches the values of this thing that we're building. So you can totally do that.
All right, that's so amazing. I wanted next week. Midnight Gypsies is putting on a podcast with some of the paranormal ladies, and I wanted to show our appreciation for International Women's Day. So I made a post, and I said that if anyone listened, I was going to make the announcement of people that are going to be on that panel next week. So let me give out those names, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. So on the panel next week is going to be Marie Yates, Julia Syracuse, Beth Huffman, Linda Anthony Hill Speaker, Kirsten Klang, Patty Negri, Kimberly Anderson Lloyd, and Sabina de los Santos. So that's our lineup for next week for anyone that's in the paranormal and wants to watch next week. We got a full house with some wonderful ladies. So I hope everyone tunes in there as well. And I want to thank anybody that's tuned in or is watching this now. Thank you so much. And Nikki, thank you so much for filling in when I needed you the most. I mean, it was just like total synchronicity tonight.
That's beautiful. Yes, for me too. I'm so glad that I could join you here. Thank you for the invitation and for all that you do. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Namaste.
All right.
Have a good night.
You too.
See you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.